People that manage to retire early have a few different hobbies and habits than the other normal people. They are a little bit quirky like that. For example, 10 years ago, when I was studying for my medical exams, I discovered the secret to actually getting high grades. It wasn't about pulling an all-nighter, really it was about creating micro habits that let me have better results long term. So this is not the case only when learning, this is also the case when investing. So in this video, I am going to share 5 micro habits that helped me save more money. You are also going to have a few tips to put into practice these micro habits. The first micro habit is something that I struggled with a lot. Because I wasn't earning a lot of money, I was really having difficulties with putting money aside for investing. But according to Warren Buffett, considered the world's best investor, the best play you can do with your money is invest first, then spend the rest. This was an enormous problem for me as well, because when I first got my salary at the end of the month, I spent it on anything but investing. If I delayed buying something that I wanted for myself, I would buy it when I got my salary. Also, I would buy gifts for other people. I would go out a lot more to eat at fancy restaurants, or not so fancy, but a lot of times. I really like tech, and I also had a big problem with purchasing the latest out there. Name a new phone or a new laptop that was shiny enough and I would buy it. So what was Warren Buffett's advice that I wasn't listening to? Basically, Warren Buffett knew that famous and successful people didn't rely on their willpower all the time, because willpower often fails you. What doesn't fail you all the time is building awesome systems. And these systems take care of business when you don't want to. So, for example, in this case, Warren Buffett was saying that this is how you make sure that you dollar cost average. In this way, you can prioritize the long-term growth of your investments. And you can enjoy, after a lot of years, compound interest. I'm sure you heard a lot of times the famous quote from Einstein that said that compounding interest is the 8th wonder of the world. So how does such a system actually look like in reality? And look, we'll cover later in another video whether you should be buying, accumulating, or distributing ETFs. But this brings me to the next micro habit of the people who retire early. The next habit people who retired early have is becoming more proficient in talking money. So even if you know now that you want to start investing and you are determined to keep going at it constantly, you still need to know how to actually do it. Basically, you need the know-how and the technical knowledge to do so. So let me show you a few things that you might want to know. First of all, let's come back to the distributing versus accumulating ETFs. This is basically how a company pays you. With distributing dividends, the company pay you directly into your account each time they distribute those dividends. So for each share, you are getting paid maybe each quarter. What this means is that you can take that money and reinvest it into other assets that you want. But here is the catch. In a lot of countries, you are getting taxed on those dividends. On the other hand, if you buy an accumulating ETF, those dividends are getting used to buy even more of that stock. So you don't get the money in your account. Each time the company pays a dividend, you get more and more shares. And in most of the countries, they don't tax you on that. And this is the part where I wanted to get to, because the people who retire early know a lot about the taxes in their country. There are a lot of smart ways to be extremely efficient when paying taxes. This is not financial advice at all. None of this video is, but you should definitely go and check out on your AI platform of your choosing what is the taxing regime for this kind of shares. This brings me to the next point, which is there are better ways to invest out there than to invest blindly with a brokerage account. For example, we are always comparing two shares. Can I get a little bit more of a return there? This is fine, of course, but a better way to do it is knowing actually how your country can help you be more efficient. Your country can help you with tax-advantaged accounts. These are special accounts that you put your money in and you don't get taxed as much when you are coming for the profits. Of course, there are a lot of accounts out there, and each one of them is specific to a country. So, for example, in the UK, you have stocks and share ISA, or the CI, the self-invested personal pension. In USA, you have the 401k and the Roth IRA. But the main point I was making here is that you have to learn a lot and make a habit out of it. But of course, learning goes hand in hand with the next habit. You need now to diversify your portfolio through multiple income streams. So an exercise for you is to think now about how many income streams do you have. Maybe one, the salary, or two, maybe you have a savings account in one bank. There is a book I read a while ago by Thomas Corley. It's called Rich Habits, where he found that 65% of self-made millionaires had at least 3 income streams before they made their first million. About 45% had around 4 income streams, and around a third had 5 or more. Alright, so not so many income streams as you might think, but here is the advice I would give you. You don't need all of them at once. You should be working on one and get that going really nice before going into income stream number 2. So now, let's say that you have a salary, you have a comfortable cushion in your bank. Let's go for the number 3rd income stream, savings. So what are you actually investing in right now? So this is a scale from the safest investments you can make to the most risky ones. The safest are saving accounts. When you put some money in your bank and the bank gives you a low yield but a safe yield. Then there are government bonds. Here is where you give money to a country and the country gives you back money in return for your help. I think the next step in this ladder is the perfect sweet spot for everyone, and this is broad index funds or ETFs. But now, without getting too much into detail, let's look here again into the most risky investments. There are individual stocks from companies you can buy, but you really need to know what you are doing to invest here. Then there are crypto and NFT. Are there still crypto and NFTs? I think people still put their money into that, yeah. And this is even more risky, in my opinion, than venture capital. Because if you have venture capital money to put into a company, then you go through an extensive process of betting before putting your money into that startup. Into options or futures, you really need to know what you are doing. So, for example, Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater Associates, became known for his all-weather portfolio. This was a portfolio split between multiple assets. The idea behind his portfolio was whatever would happen in the world, something that he owned was always thriving. So what was it made of? It was about 30% of stocks, 40% of government bonds, 15% intermediate term bonds, 7.5% gold, and the other 7.5% commodities like oil, corn, aluminium. This is already enough talk about investing. Let me ask you another type of question that will bring us to the next point. Are you going to save money all your life without enjoying the little pleasures in it? The answer to the previous question is no, because people that retire early know exactly how much money they need in order to retire. And they use the 25x rule we are going to talk about right now. So the number you need to retire isn't $1 million, right? Or maybe it is, but you take your annual spending and you multiply it by 25. Somebody that spends 40,000 euros a year needs 40,000 euros or 25 equals 1 million euros. Then, someone who spends 25,000 euros a year needs 25 x 25, that is 625,000 euros in retirement. So, what's up with these big numbers? Basically, there are studies that show that you can take only 4% each year from this sum and you can live off of them when you are retired. Of course, 4% adjusted for inflation. There are, of course, a few problems with the 4% rule that aren't taken always into consideration when people talk on the internet about it. For example, taxes and fees are not taken into consideration. Or this doesn't account for early retirement, only if you retire at about 65, 70 years old. There is also a bad part about this strategy, that is, you are absolutely confined designed to rigid spending, only 4% each year. So what do you do if an unexpected high expense appears? But that's not the idea here. The idea is that this means that early retirement depends only on the cost of living. So this is my advice. Go on the internet and search for one of these calculators. Also, some of the banking apps have them as well. I have one linked into the description down below. And write down your expenses from the last month. And this way we make sure you don't cheat. The expenses from the last month are your actual expenses. So you take the expenses from your last month, you multiply it with 12 and then with 25 again. And that is the amount you need to save the big pictures. Remember, there are no taxes included in this calculation. And now that you know how much you are spending each month and you know how much you are spending on each category, this brings me to the next point. Skipping Starbucks actually helps and actually works, because we actually just showed that early retirement is dependent on how much you save. But there is another angle you could be looking at this from. If I were to invest all my Starbucks lattes, how much would that be with, of course, compound interest in, for example, 30 years? So let's make the assumption we are going to pay 5 euros per latte per week and we are going to get 2 lattes a week. So we are spending 10 euros a week on latte. Fine. Let's take those 10 euros and let's actually put them into a broad-based ETF and let it compound monthly. So in the first decade, we are investing 5,200 euros. In the first 2 decades, we are saving 10,400 euros. And after 30 years, we are saving 15,600 euros. So let's assume that we are getting a 7% return in 30 years instead of 15,600 euros. We are going to have in our investing account 79,000 euros. It doesn't seem like a lot if you put it in the context of 30 years, but remember, everything is relative, because we just calculated earlier that you could retire with 625,000 euros. That's about 10 to 15% of what you need in order to retire earlier. And I think that is very worth it. There you go, now you know how much lattes matter. But I guarantee you that you'll be able to buy even more lattes if you know the most common habits that keep you poor. I go over them in the next video.